to the Chow Time Pod. It's your host, Red. I got a video today from Patient Senya. She's a kind of decent-sized YouTuber, black woman from Africa. It's just speaking on the passport bros and how she feels about it. I actually really love her take. She seems like the proper woman to be actually criticizing and critiquing some of these things. So please like and subscribe down below. I'd really appreciate that. And let's get to the chow. It's chow time.
Hello my dears, welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be discussing a phenomenon that I've seen on social media. I say phenomenon as if it's new, although personally I don't think there's anything remotely remarkable or new about this. Nope. People have been doing it for a very long time, but it seems to have been given its own name, and so it's kind of become a bit of a movement. So today we are going to be discussing passport bros. So for those of you who've never heard of passport bros, a quick summary is they are Western men who are moving to other non-Western countries in order to find a partner. And the reason
perfect definition right there. Nothing more, nothing less, just Western men leaving the country to go find partners.
For that is because they prefer non-Western women, and this has caused a bit of a drama, I guess, on social media. There are some women who are not very happy about it, and so I thought we'd kind of just take a look at the interactions between the women who are against it and the men's responses to them. So that's what we're going to be reacting to today.
We don't talk enough about how passport bros are just predators.
I'm not a predator if I sleep with women in America, but if I sleep with women outside of America, I'm a predator. Got you. Guess that means you should stop sleeping with people in different states too, right? You live in Florida. Don't sleep with somebody in Chicago. You're a predator. Logic. The obesity rate in a different country is not as high as America. Stay 100. Here and sleep with all the mammoths. Got it? Women in other countries are nice and they look good. Stay here. Deal with somebody who's nice but don't look good. Or deal with somebody who looks good and wants to rob you passively.
Yeah.
Nice. I don't think she used logic. I don't think logic matters to her. She's not happy at all. She keeps on forgetting to use her Planet Fitness membership.
He does have a point though. Why is it predatory just because these women don't live in the States or don't live in the West? Because the phenomenon of people finding partners in different countries is not new at all. And I think since the rise of the internet and online dating, this has been happening all the time. There's an entire show called 90 Day Fiancé around this, about Americans, both men and women, finding partners from overseas or abroad and basically bringing them back to the US to marry them. It's been happening for a very, very long time. There's nothing remotely remarkable or new about this. And I find it really interesting because would they regard it as predatory if these non-Western women had moved to the West and then got into a relationship with a Western man? Would that be predatory then, or would that be perfectly fine? Because if they would argue that there's nothing wrong with a non-Western woman moving to a Western country and getting into a relationship, then why would it be predatory in the opposite direction? So is it the direction of the flight that determines whether or not it's predatory?
When you pay attention to the passport bros, like they're getting women from like the DR, Colombia, the Philippines, Thailand, like women that can speak very little English, women that don't have education, women that need them, women that need them.
Women are raised to be wives. Mm-hmm. They learn everything from birth, from their father, from their mother, how to be a wife and how to support your man.
Women that need them.
It's not even women that need them. It's women that treat them with respect.
So we don't.
Y'all know y'all don't.
That's not true. I mean, there's no need for that, right? There's no need to crap on women in other countries just to make yourself feel better about the reason why these men are choosing them over you. To assume that they speak very little English, to assume that they are uneducated, to assume that they're all of these things. When you've never been to these countries, you've never...
That's the point. I don't think very many of these women have actually been outside of the country, have met women outside of the country, or been to these countries and see how women are and how men are in these countries. They're just projecting that they're upset because their dating pool's shrinking, right?
But you don't know how they live. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, most places, except for English-speaking countries, can speak multiple languages, English being one of them. This assumption that they wouldn't be able to speak English, I don't know why.
This is correct. Even in Cambodia, a lot of kids grow up learning English in Cambodia because it is one of the most dominant languages in Cambodia other than Khmer itself, because a lot of refugees came to the U.S. and most of the money that goes back and forth in Cambodia is U.S. money. So, and U.S. people in the U.S. visit often. So, a lot of them do speak. I don't think all of them speak decent English, but you know, all the tour guide areas and all those places. Actually, my family members do tour guides at the temples and stuff like that, and they speak decent English. So, I don't know why they all think that all these countries don't speak English. And even though that's the case, why does that matter? Just because they don't speak English doesn't mean they're less educated because they speak a different language. Like she said, most countries speak multiple languages other than in the U.S.
Assume that, considering English is taught in a lot of countries as a language that they have to learn. So I don't know. It's just ignorance. It's just giving ignorance. It's giving ignorance.
This is a huge red flag. The only men who like to go overseas to find a partner is men who like to prey on vulnerable women. Because when you go find a wife in the Philippines or Thailand or Eastern Europe or wherever these places are that are overseas, I'm assuming you mean they're more biddable, that they're less outspoken, they don't demand anything of you.
So bitter.
That they're just happy to be rescued from their poverty-stricken life of no opportunity, and in return, all they have to do is subject themselves to your advances. So I do wonder at your motivation for why you want to go overseas to find a partner. Is it because you prefer your woman biddable, without opinions, unable to fight back, and vulnerable? Because if that's the case, you know what that makes you, right?
I know what this video makes you.
Seriously.
Bitter. Maybe I find it extra triggering because I was born in Africa. And it's just so insulting because they have this superiority complex. They just assume that everyone in these countries lives like the charity adverts that they see on television. And it's just like, pull your head out of your ass, please.
Seriously.
Okay? Western women are not the only ones who are educated, who are able to have their own opinions and speak their minds. But the one thing that these non-Western women do have that the Western women, according to these men, don't have is the ability to still have their own opinions, still be educated, while still maintaining the ability to be respectful, while still maintaining the ability to be cooperative with their partner. It seems as though, based on what these men are saying, they're saying that they find that these women are better wives. They're raised better to be a lot less, well, basically like that woman in that video. I mean, personally, if I was a man looking for a woman and that is all my country had to offer me, I would buy a one-way ticket as well. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but the way she spoke about these women and their countries was so disrespectful and so out of line.
These women are so rude to other women of other countries. It's ridiculous. Do you think you're the shit? Do you know there's women in other countries that are richer than you and are more well-off than you? Even in these like third world countries, there's still wealth.
I just, can you blame the men for not wanting to come home to that every day after work? I don't. I personally don't.
Problem with passport bros.
So I was thinking about this. Why do they care? Why do they care that men are going their own way and finding women in foreign countries? Why are they so upset? Why do they call them dusty and useless and then get mad that they're leaving? They don't want them, but they don't want them to leave. And why are they making these videos? To tell us how they don't care. And it finally struck me. The video is not for the passport boys. The videos are for their orbiters, the friend zone men. They want to make sure they don't get this idea in their head that they can go somewhere else, that there are other women available to them if they just leave the country. They need these men to stay in their orbit, to keep validating them. That is what they're terrified, is they will lose the influence they have amongst the few men who still put up with them.
I mean, that is an interesting theory. I don't personally think that they are saying the things that they're saying because they are trying to get the men in their friend zone to not get this idea. Because typically if a guy's in the friend zone, it's because she's not attracted to him. That's the only way a man ends up in the friend zone is if the woman is not attracted to him. And unless something suddenly changes that makes him more attractive, he's likely going to remain in that friend zone. But I think that the reason why the women are doing this is because as much as they want to pretend they don't care, and as much as they want to pretend that they think that these men are beneath them, and therefore that's why they're going to women who they deem as beneath them. And I can only assume that these women think that non-Western women are inferior, considering so far they've called them poverty-stricken, uneducated, and desperate for opportunities. So I actually think that their behavior is pretty standard behavior when it comes to women and how they try to manipulate the dating market. Women often use shame to try and manipulate the sexual market, because in order for them to...
She definitely knows. She definitely knows. It's probably because she's used it herself.
be successful at finding a partner, sometimes you might need to, cheat a little bit. And so that's when shame comes into play. You'll see this all the time happening with other situations. So, for example, there are women who get very upset with older men who are not attracted to older women. Mm-hmm. They'll shame them and call them predators. It's always predators. That's always the go-to. They'll call them predators, etc. Now, while personally, I also think that people are better off dating within their own age range, I don't think it's predatory for a young adult woman to consent to a relationship with an older man. To imply that it's predatory is a bit of an overreach. But of course, the women who typically do this shaming are typically older women themselves. They shame the older men for dating the younger women. And they do this because if the older men are going after the younger women, then they're not going after them. Yep. And that's a problem because they also want partners as well. This happens a lot with Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo DiCaprio is constantly being shamed for dating 20-something-year-old models and stuff. And I remember seeing someone on Twitter tweeted something like, it's interesting how these women will say that these women are too young to date Leonardo DiCaprio, but they wouldn't say anything if these same women decided to open an OnlyFans. So they think they're old enough to have an OnlyFans, but not old enough to consent to a relationship with an older guy. It makes perfect sense why that double standard exists. Because if a woman chooses to go on OnlyFans, she becomes no threat to them.
Perfect. This is the part I wanted to get to. I actually didn't even think about this, why these older women are so adamant for younger women to be on OnlyFans. It kind of makes sense now because these younger women are ruining themselves being on OnlyFans. That makes these older women more desirable because they weren't on OnlyFans. So
she chooses to go on OnlyFans. Because as I said in my last video, most guys don't want to date a woman who's been on OnlyFans or who is currently on OnlyFans, but they have a lot more of an interest in shaming the older guys dating younger women because that does impact them, because it reduces their dating pool options if some of the men who would typically be in their dating pool are choosing to go to other women instead. And that is all we're seeing here. Again, we're just seeing another example of women using shame to try and manipulate the sexual marketplace. They're seeing that the men in their home countries would prefer to be with women from other parts of the world than them. And that's a problem, because if you've got men from your country flying and jetting off to other places, that means your dating pool is fleeing. So of course you have to step in, and what do? Shame. You shame them, you call them predatory for doing it, you call them all sorts of names, and in hopes that they won't do it. But as we know, this kind of behavior isn't going to be very effective. Nope. Just like we've learned that we can't shame men into finding bigger women attractive, and we can't shame men into finding older women attractive, we also can't shame men into finding non-traditional Western women attractive. There are some men who don't want traditional women, who want the more modern Western woman.
Yeah, it's called
and that's
simps.
Fine. Those are the guys that will more than happily date you. But there are a lot of men who do like traditional women. They like women who are happy to embrace their femininity, who are more agreeable and cooperative, who are a lot more traditional in the sense that they want to have families, they want to have children, they're a lot more family orientated. These seem to be, from what I've seen, the biggest drives in what makes these men want to go abroad. They're very traditional men, and they want to be with a traditional woman. And so naturally, if you're a traditional guy and you want to be with a traditional woman, it makes sense for you to go to countries where tradition is celebrated.
And I can promise you, we Asian women are happy to have your men and offer them everything they've been looking for. And you attack us Asian women too. You call us poor, uneducated, submissive, desperate women who are happy with your table scraps and rejects. But if you truly believe we were getting your leftovers, the men you don't want anyway, then why do you sound so angry and defensive about it and try to shame men for finding happiness here? And what you call submissive is what we call being agreeable. Do I look uneducated, submissive, and desperate to you? Well, guess what? There are millions more like me over here just waiting to have a shot at making your man happy.
Damn.
I mean, she got a point.
You tell him. Tell him! And I agree with her 100%. I think it's so ignorant to assume that just because these women live in non-Western countries that aren't as rich as places like the US or the UK or whatever, that they are automatically uneducated, automatically weak, automatically can't think for themselves, and just are these basically like victims.
It's the entitlement of the US. This is why people hate us in the US. It's like when US people go visit other countries, it is not the same as other people coming to visit us in the US.
Essentially, that are being preyed upon by men is just so ignorant, complete and utter ignorance. And I just think it's disrespectful. And so I'm glad that one of the women has actually said it, because it was annoying me too. The way I see it is like this. People migrate to different parts of the world all the time for different reasons. Whether it's because there are better job prospects over there, whether it's because they prefer the culture over there, and also sometimes because they prefer the men or the women there. And I don't see why that's such a big deal, because women do this too. Like I said, 90 Day Fiancé, you see women doing the exact same thing, women finding partners from across the world. And so both of the sexes do this. The only reason why it's such a big deal when men do it is because women handle rejection very differently to men. Men just kind of take it on the chin. Women will start entire movements.
Yeah,
when a woman discovers that she is not a man's
body shame movement, slut walk, what other shit we can think of,
preference, it cuts her deep, you know? She's more likely to be like,
how dare you? You have stolen my dreams.
And we see this all the time with standards as well. When women set their standards and say they only want to date tall men, or they only want to date guys who are successful, it's just, yes, queen, don't settle for less. But if a man dared to say that he just wants a woman who's slim, he's a misogynist, he's fatphobic, he's a misogynist, he needs to die. We handle rejection differently, what can I say? But ultimately, at the end of the day, personally, I see absolutely nothing wrong with passport bros. I think that if they feel like they'd be more likely to find a more compatible partner somewhere else, then why not? Who am I to stop potential love? You know what I mean? I think to the women who are upset with the passport bros, see, there's two ways you can handle life, right? You can either be bitter and angry at the people who have the things that you want, or you can learn from them and learn how you can obtain it for yourself. Personally, I prefer to go for option 2, because option 1 just leaves you bitter and filled with resentment, but your situation doesn't change. Whereas at least with option 2, you have a chance of actually changing your situation. If you don't like your outcomes, change your behavior. You can...
Ooh, I love that statement. If you don't like your outcome, change your behavior. I love that. I love that.
You can shame these men as much as you want. You can put down these women and put down their home countries as much as you want. You're still going to be single. It's not going to make you any more desirable to these men. A smart woman would learn a thing or two from these women. A less smart woman would choose to call them uneducated, desperate for opportunities, poverty-stricken. But regardless of all of these things that you think they are, they're still able to get the men that don't want you. So, but that is all I have to really say on this. I would be curious to know what your thoughts are on the passport bros, and I would be curious to know what your thoughts are on the responses to the passport bros. Do let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, then you may as well like and subscribe. I am also on other social.
How was Xenia's chow? I actually enjoyed it. It's nice to get a perspective of a woman that understands, right? She is from Africa, so hearing like women from the West shitting on other women in other countries, it hits her because she's originally from another country, especially a third world country that, you know, poverty stricken and everything. And just for these women to be just talking mad shit on other women in other countries is ridiculous, because most of these women have never gone anywhere or seen anything like outside of the US themselves, or they've seen Dubai and like the really fancy spots and, you know, got their backs blown out, but like actual, you know, mingling with culture and everything, I don't think women do that too often. So please like and subscribe down below. I really appreciate that, and catch you guys next time. It's chow time.